It was still early when Amos Reed spotted something strange on the far side of the pasture, something that didn't belong out there in the dust and brush. He had ridden this stretch of land 100 times, but that shape, hunched near the fence post with its legs curled under and hair catching on the barbed wire, wasn't any coyote or stray calf. He slowed his horse, boots tightening in the stirrups. The wind carried no sound, just the creak of saddle leather and the slow grind of hooves over gravel. His gut twisted as he got closer. It was a girl. She was tied to the fence with rope that looked too tight for skin. Her head was slumped forward, and her long brown hair covered most of her face. Amos's heart beat loud in his ears, steady and heavy. His horse pawed at the ground. He slid off and stepped closer, boots crunching. "Miss," he said low. No answer, just the sound of her ragged breath. He knelt beside her, careful not to touch her too quick. She flinched when he reached for the knot at her wrists, her whole body tensing like a deer ready to bolt, even if she couldn't. "I ain't gonna hurt you," he said, voice rough but quiet. She didn't speak, didn't lift her head, but she let him cut the rope. Her wrists were red and raw, skin torn. Her bare feet were scraped up from gravel. Her dress, if you could still call it that, was torn and dirty, hanging off her in pieces. She looked 18 at most. She didn't even cry. Not once. Amos took off his coat and laid it over her shoulders. Still, she didn't speak. Her eyes stayed on the ground. Something about that silence, that stiff, cold silence, made his chest tighten more than any scream would have. He didn't ask questions. Not yet. He helped her up. She could barely walk, just shuffled, holding the coat tight around herself. Amos got her on the horse and climbed up behind her, holding her steady. The whole way back to the ranch, she never once turned her head. His mind raced. Who would leave a girl like that? Tie her up like she was nothing? The way she hadn't said a word. Amos had seen hurt before, had patched up horses mauled by wolves, men shot in bar fights. But this was different. This was someone broken in a way no doctor could stitch. Back at the cabin, he helped her down, still silent. She followed him inside without looking around, just walked in barefoot on the wooden floor and stood there. "You hungry?" he asked, but she gave no sign she'd heard. He fixed her a plate of beans and cornbread anyway, set it on the table. She sat but didn't eat, just stared at the plate, shoulders stiff under his coat. Her fingers were shaking. He didn't push her. He sat across from her in the quiet. The stove cracked behind them. Wind pushed dust against the windows, and the whole world outside felt far away. Like it didn't matter right now. Just her and what she'd been through, and him trying to figure out what came next. Amos had never been good with people. Not with words, either. But he knew when something needed fixing, and he knew what didn't heal fast. The girl finally looked up, her eyes red but dry. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. Amos didn't need her to explain. Not yet. Not now. She wasn't safe out there. Whoever did that might come looking, or worse, might have left her there hoping no one would find her at all. "I got an extra room," he said after a while, nodding toward the back. "Ain't much, but it's warm." She followed him slow, still holding the coat closed at her chest. That night, he sat by the stove long after she lay down. Didn't sleep, just stared into the fire. He didn't know her name, didn't know where she came from, but he'd seen enough men do evil and walk away whistling. Maybe this was his chance to stand in the way. Out in the darkness, coyotes cried across the hills. The fence she'd been tied to ran miles across open land. No town nearby, no one to report it. Just silence. Just her. And Amos knew that silence wouldn't last forever. The next morning came slow. Pale gray light crept through the windows, and the girl was still asleep, curled up on the edge of the bed like she didn't trust the mattress. Amos sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee that had gone cold. He'd been up since before dawn, listening for anything, hoofbeats, a knock, a sound that said trouble was coming. But there was nothing, just the crack of wood settling and the wind outside whispering over the ridge. Her boots were still missing. He'd noticed that first thing. She didn't have any when he found her. Just bare, cut-up feet that said she'd been walking, maybe running, through scrub and stone. Whoever left her didn't care if she got back. They wanted her to vanish. He heard her stir and rise, slow and quiet like she was afraid to make a sound. She padded into the main room, still wearing his coat. Her hair had dried into loose knots. Her eyes didn't meet his, but she sat at the table without being asked. Her lips moved like she wanted to say something, but was still too scared of the sound. Amos cleared his throat and reached for the skillet. He cracked 2 eggs and let them sizzle while he talked. Name's Amos. Amos Reed. I run cattle north of here. Got about 2 dozen head, mostly longhorns. My brother used to help, but he's gone now. She nodded just once. Still didn't speak. He slid the plate to her. You don't have to say nothing you don't want to. You don't owe me anything. Her fork moved slow. A few bites, then she stopped again. Her hands still trembled, even when she tried to hold them still. Later that day, he rode into town alone. He didn't tell her he was going, just said he'd be back before sundown. He didn't want to spook her. She nodded again, wordless. At Harris Ridge, the town sat like a forgotten patch of dust and smoke. A few stores, a single jailhouse, and one main street that always smelled like whiskey and horse. Amos tied off his horse in front of the general store and nodded to Miss Garvey, who was stacking canned peaches in the window. You're out early, she said. Need supplies. She gave him a squint. You all right, Amos? You look like you ain't slept. Just a rough week, he muttered. She packed up some beans, bandages, salt, and a new bar of lye soap. You find that steer went missing? Nope. Found something else, though. He didn't say what. Just paid and left. Sheriff Merle caught him outside the stable, where Amos was checking his saddle straps. Morning, Reed, the sheriff said. He was younger than most lawmen, clean-shaven with sharp boots and eyes that didn't miss much. You hear about the trouble south of Dry Creek? No, some folks came through. Claimed they saw a girl tied to a fence out there. Said she was gone by the time they circled back. You seen anything strange? Amos's hand paused on the strap. No. Merle watched him a little too long, then nodded. Well, you see or hear anything, you let me know. Town's jumpy lately. Some rumors of folks gone missing. Amos nodded and rode out without another word. By the time he got back, the sun was falling low over the hills. His cabin was still standing. Smoke from the chimney told him the stove hadn't gone cold. Inside, she was sitting by the fire, wrapped in a blanket now. The coat lay folded across the chair. He didn't ask what she'd done while he was gone. Just handed her the soap and bandages. She looked up at him, then back down, her lips parting just enough. My name's Mara Finch, she said. The sound of her voice surprised them both. It was thin and raspy, like it hadn't been used in days. All right, Mara, Amos said gently. That's a good start. Over the next few days, she said little else. But he noticed things. She flinched when he moved too fast. She never slept through the night. Sometimes he'd find her sitting by the window, staring out like she was waiting for something or someone. One evening, while they were eating stew, she finally spoke again. I didn't know where I was. I just ran. Amos didn't press. He waited. He was going to sell me, she whispered. Said I cost too much to feed if I wasn't going to do what he wanted. She looked up then, and Amos saw in her eyes. The fear, the shame. The way her voice cracked, like something inside had snapped long ago. I fought back. That's why he tied me out there. Said someone might come by and see what happens to girls who talk too much. Amos's jaw tightened. He didn't say anything, just kept his hand steady around the spoon. She went quiet again after that. Didn't cry, didn't explain more, but something in her changed. She started eating a little more, sat by the fire closer. She even walked to the edge of the porch one morning and watched the sun rise. It was the first time he saw her without that weight in her eyes. Just for a second, then a knock came on the door. Amos opened it to see Jonah Baird, his neighbor from 5 miles west. An older man with gray in his beard and a shotgun always hanging across his back. He looked nervous. Amos, Jonah said, looking past him into the cabin. You seen anyone strange up this way? Got word some men rode through the south ridge of skin about a girl. Amos didn't flinch. No one's been by here. They was heading north. Couple of them. Looked rough. One had a scar down his face like a knife caught him bad. Mean eyes. Amos nodded slowly. You see him again. Don't talk to him. You in trouble, Amos? Amos held his stare. Not me. Jonah tipped his hat, uneasy, and rode off. Inside, Mara was standing by the wall, white-faced, staring toward the door. He's coming, she whispered. He'll find me. Amos took the shotgun down from the mantel and set it by the door. Then he looked at her, calm and sure. Not while you're under my roof. That night, Mara didn't sleep at all. Neither did Amos. Outside, the wind picked up. Coyotes howled. But the cabin stood firm in the dark. And inside, two broken lives waited for whatever was coming next. The morning after Jonah's warning passed without trouble, though neither Amos nor Mara trusted the quiet. Still, something had shifted. Maybe it was the way Mara poured water into the kettle without him asking. Maybe it was how she looked him in the eye when she handed him his coffee. She still barely spoke, but there was a steadiness in her now. A quiet way she carried herself, like she was piecing herself back together one sliver at a time. Days turned into a week, then two. No one came up the trail. No riders. No sheriff. Just wind and dust and the hum of early summer insects. Amos kept busy, mending fence posts, hauling feed, checking the cows, and Mara started helping in ways she could. She fed the chickens, swept the porch, even stitched one of his torn shirts. He tried not to notice how small her hands looked holding a needle, or how often she stared out across the hills, like the past might still be riding up behind her. One afternoon, she followed him to the barn without a word. Amos was hauling hay, sweat darkening the back of his shirt. He turned, surprised to see her standing in the doorway, arms folded around herself. I want to help, she said. He studied her for a moment, then handed her a smaller pitchfork. Start with that pile. Go slow. She worked beside him for nearly an hour, arms shaking but stubborn as anything. She didn't complain, didn't stop, just worked in silence, as if she needed to do something hard to prove she could. Later, they sat on the porch drinking water, breathing heavy. The sun hung low behind the trees. Amos handed her a biscuit left from lunch. She took it, chewing slow. You ever live on a ranch before? He asked. She shook her head. Never lived anywhere long. Mostly stayed where he told me. Amos didn't push. He let her talk when she wanted. That's how trust worked. On her time, not his. That night, she sat by the fire a little closer. Her feet were finally healing. She'd found an old pair of socks in one of his drawers and wore them like they were made of gold. It made him smile, the quiet kind of smile he hadn't known he had anymore. A few days later, he took her riding. It wasn't far, just a loop through the nearest meadow where the grass was soft and the land rolled gentle. She was nervous at first, stiff in the saddle, but Amos stayed close. He talked her through the reins, the stirrups, how to guide the horse with her legs more than her hands. You're doing fine, he said when she got the rhythm. I feel like I can breathe out here, she said quietly. It's like the world ain't watching. He knew what she meant. Out there, beneath the wide sky, the past felt farther away. Safer somehow. They rode in silence most of the way back, but Mara didn't look scared anymore. She looked present, like part of her had come back. The next morning, she surprised him again. She was standing outside with a comb, trying to braid her hair. Her fingers were clumsy, but she kept at it, brows drawn tight. He watched from the window, then walked out holding a strip of ribbon he'd found in a drawer long ago, one that belonged to his late sister. You might want this, he said, holding it out. She took it slow, fingers brushing his. Thank you. She tied it in with a shaky breath, but her hands stopped trembling. That small thing, fixing her own hair, adding a ribbon, wasn't just grooming. It was reclaiming something. That day she laughed. Just once. The horse she'd been helping brush sneezed on her shoulder and she jerked, startled, then covered her mouth with her hand, giggling before she could stop it. Amos froze. The sound was light, raw, awkward, like it didn't quite belong in her throat yet, but it made his chest warm. He didn't say anything, didn't make a big deal of it, just smiled and kept brushing the horse. Later that night, they sat by the fire again. She looked down, fingers toying with the ribbon in her hair. He said no one would ever care, that I'd never be more than what he made me. Amos set the carving down. He was wrong. She turned toward him, eyes wide and searching. How do you know? Because I care. The room went still. The fire popped, but neither moved. Mara didn't speak, just looked at him like she was trying to decide if it could be true. Then she nodded once, slow and heavy, like something inside her let go. The next day brought the first sign of trouble in weeks. Tracks by the outer fence line. Amos found them just past the north ridge. Fresh boot prints and cigarette ash near the gate. Not townsfolk, not ranch hands. These were men moving quiet, watching from the edge. He didn't tell Mara right away. No need to scare her if it was nothing. But he oiled a rifle that night and left it by the door. He also moved her bedroll to the back room and put a lock on the door from the inside. That night, she noticed. You saw something? She said. Maybe. Just tracks. You think it's him? I think we're going to be ready either way. She nodded, then looked at the fire again. I used to think I'd die out there, tied up like that. I thought that was going to be it. Just the dirt and the sun and nothing else. You didn't die, Amos said. She turned to him. No, you didn't let me. He didn't respond. Just stared into the fire, jaw tight. A few nights later, Mara brought a book to the fire, a tattered, spine-worn volume of short poems. She read one out loud, soft and slow, stumbling over some words but never stopping. It was a poem about a bird that forgot how to sing and had to relearn its own voice. When she finished, she looked at him. You think that's silly? No, he said. I think it's true. Every day after, she read another. She said she used to be good at school before everything, that she liked books because they were quiet but full of things that mattered. He told her about his mother, how she used to hum while shelling peas, about his brother, who died in the war and never came home, about the silence that followed and how it filled every room for years. Guess we both got ghosts, she said. Yeah, he replied, but I think you're scaring yours off better than I am. One afternoon, they found a deer caught in the lower fence, snared by its leg and thrashing in panic. Amos approached slow, knife in hand, and motioned for Mara to stay back. But she didn't. I can help, she said, walking toward the frightened animal. Her voice was soft. Her hands didn't shake. They freed it together. The deer limped away, bloodied but alive. Mara watched it vanish into the trees, then whispered, I know how that feels. That night, Amos lit a second lamp, just because. The cabin felt warmer than usual. Full, in a way it hadn't in years. But not everything was mended. Some days, Mara went quiet again. Amos would find her outside, staring toward the fence line, or curled up by the fire with the book unopened in her lap. She never asked if someone was coming. She already knew the answer, but she also knew she wasn't alone. One morning, Mara woke before Amos. He found her in the barn feeding the horses, hair tied back, sleeves rolled. She looked up, eyes bright. I want to stay, she said. He stopped in the doorway. You don't have to leave. I don't mean just for now. I mean I want this. I want something good. With you. He walked over slow, reached for her hand. She let him take it. You already got it, he said. And in that quiet space, among hay and dust and morning light, something finally settled. Not everything was healed, but it was healing, and it was real. The calm never lasted long. Amos had known that the way some men know weather before it turns. Something in the air shifted, quiet but certain. Mara felt it too. She started keeping her boots close to the bed, watching the door like it might open on its own. She still helped with the chores, still read her poems, but the spark that had begun to glow in her was flickering again. One night, a loud knock shattered the stillness. Amos stood, rifle already in hand, eyes on the door. But when he opened it, it was only Sheriff Merle, holding his hat and looking uneasy. I need to talk, Merle said, voice low. Can I come in? Amos let him inside, wary. Mara stayed in the back, listening. "There's talk in town," Merle said, glancing toward the closed bedroom door. A man came in a skin around, scar on his face. I mean, just like Jonah said, claimed someone ran off with his property. Amos stiffened. "She ain't his property. I know that. You know that. But the law don't always see things the same when there ain't no proof." "She's not safe," Amos said. He tied her to a fence like an animal. Left her out there to die. "You got witnesses?" "She is the witness." Merle looked tired. "That ain't enough for a warrant, Amos." "Not unless she's willing to testify. And even then, men like that have ways of turning things around." "Then I'll handle 'em my way," Amos said, voice low. Merle looked at him hard. "Don't do anything stupid. Just be careful. He knows she's up this way." When the sheriff left, Amos found Mara by the door, pale and silent. She'd heard everything. Her hands were clenched at her sides. "I can't go back," she said, voice shaking. "You're not going anywhere," he told her. But the fear had sunk in. Over the next few days, she pulled away. She stopped reading. She worked until her hands blistered, even when he told her to rest. When he asked what was wrong, she said nothing, but her silence screamed. That night, he found her sitting outside in the dark, arms wrapped around her knees. "I'm not strong like you think," she said. "I was going to give up. When I was tied to that fence, I didn't think anyone was coming. I wanted it to be over." He sat beside her, quiet. "I keep hearing his voice," she whispered. "Even now, he used to say I was only good for one thing, that no one would ever love a girl like me." Amos stared out across the hills. He lied. She looked at him, eyes shining with tears she hadn't let fall. "You don't know everything. You don't know what I did to survive. I stole. I lied. He turned to her then, voice firm but gentle. "You did what you had to. That don't make you less." "I'm not clean," she said. "Not like you." He shook his head. "I'm not clean either. I've done things I don't talk about. I've watched good men die. Watched bad ones walk away free. I've been angry, Mara. Real angry. Enough to want to kill." She blinked, caught off guard. "I buried my brother with my own hands," he said. "I was the one who told my mama he wasn't coming home. You think that kind of grief leaves a man whole?" Mara looked down. "I just wanted to be somebody new here. But he's coming, and when he does, I'll be that scared girl again." Amos leaned closer. "No, you won't. You're not the same girl anymore." But she didn't believe it. Not really. The fear was too big, too familiar. The next day, he found her gone. The bed was cold. Her boots were missing. The front door stood half open, swinging in the wind. She'd left without a note. Amos didn't waste time. He saddled his horse and rode hard through the hills. He knew where she'd go, south, back toward the road, maybe to town, maybe trying to disappear again. She wasn't running from him. She was running from herself. He found her near the old creek bed, curled beneath a fallen tree, coat pulled tight, shaking. "I thought maybe if I left, he wouldn't come looking," she said when he approached. Amos dismounted and knelt beside her. "Or maybe you thought if he did come, you'd rather it be you he finds than me." She didn't answer. "I'm not afraid of him," Amos said, "but I'm damn afraid of losing you." Her face broke then. Not loud, not wild. Just soft tears sliding down her cheeks like she didn't know they were there. He pulled her close, and this time she didn't fight it. She clung to him like someone who'd spent too long pretending she didn't need anyone. Back at the cabin, things didn't go back to normal overnight. She was quieter now, more careful. She apologized for leaving, and he told her she didn't owe him anything but truth. A week passed. No sign of the scar-faced man. Amos started thinking maybe the wind had changed again. Then the barn burned. He saw the smoke first, thick and black, rising against the evening sky. He ran before he even thought, but by the time he got there, it was too late. The horses had been cut loose, thank God, but the structure was gone. Mara stood a few yards away, fists pressed her mouth, eyes wide with horror. "They found us," she whispered. Amos didn't say it, but he knew she was right. This wasn't random. This was a warning. They slept with the rifle loaded that night, every creak of the floorboard sending Mara rigid. She kept her boots on. Amos didn't take off his shirt or his gun belt. He didn't say it aloud, but he knew it was time. They had to face him. But Mara wasn't ready. Not yet. One morning, Amos found her staring into the mirror, touching her own face like she was seeing it for the first time. "I don't want to be afraid," she whispered. "Then let's make sure you're not." They started small. Practice. Amos taught her to shoot. First the rifle, then the pistol. She was shaky at first, but determined. She wanted to know how to fight. "I don't want to kill him," she said one afternoon, reloading with shaking hands. "I just want to stop shaking when I hear his name." That night, she told him more. About her mother, who died when Mara was 12. About the man who took her in, claimed to be a family friend, who turned out to be nothing more than a monster with a soft voice and a cruel hand. "He never hit me in front of people," she said. "He was smart about it." Amos had seen men like that. Smooth talkers, churchgoers, the kind folks trusted until the door closed. "He told me if I ever tried to run, he'd kill me and bury me where no one would care." But someone cared, Amos said. She looked at him, tired but holding on. "Yeah, you did." The next day, Jonah came riding in again. This time his face was red with panic. "He's in town," Jonah said, breathless. "Saw him myself. Asked if I'd seen a girl with brown hair and a limp. He's coming this way." Mara stood behind the door, fists clenched. Amos looked at her. "You still want to run?" She shook her head. "No, I want to stand." He nodded. "Then we do it together." But deep down he was scared too. Not of the man, of what it would do to Mara. To face the past and have to prove to herself that she was no longer a victim. They spent the day preparing, securing the windows, loading the guns. Mara made tea with trembling hands and sat on the porch as the sun dropped. Amos watched her from the doorway. She looked calm, but he could see the war inside her. She was scared. So was he. But something had changed. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't alone. And when that rider came down the trail, she stood up on her own 2 feet. Not behind Amos. Not in the shadows. She stood on the porch, waiting. He came at sunset. The sound of the horse was sharp against the gravel, a slow, steady rhythm that echoed across the quiet land like a death bell. Amos stood just inside the door, rifle ready, heart beating hard but steady. Mara stood on the porch, arms loose at her sides, shoulders back, chin lifted. She wasn't holding a weapon. She didn't want to meet him with violence. Not unless he gave her no other choice. The man stopped at the edge of the yard. His horse shifted under him, snorting. Dust clung to his boots, his black coat, the wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. But Amos saw the scar immediately. A long white line down the left cheek, cutting through stubble and down toward his jaw. It twisted when he grinned. "Well, I'll be," the man said, voice smooth and slow, like syrup over poison. "Didn't think I'd find you this far out, girl." Mara didn't move, didn't blink. "You come all this way just to die?" Amos said from the doorway. The man chuckled. "Ain't here for trouble. Just came to collect what's mine." "She's not yours," Amos said. "She is," he snapped, eyes narrowing. "You think you could take a man's girl and hide her out here? She's got debts." "I'm not a debt," Mara said, her voice quiet but clear. "I'm a person. I'm not your anything." His eyes shifted toward her. "That ain't what you said when you were begging me not to throw you out in the snow. You remember that?" "I remember," she said, her hands trembling now at her sides. "I remember everything. I remember what you did, what you said. I remember the bruises and the lies. I remember how you told me no one would help me. But you were wrong." Amos stepped forward. "You so much as spit in her direction, I'll bury you where no one finds a bones." But Mara held her ground. "No," she said, without looking at Amos. "This is mine." The man dismounted slow, boots hitting the dirt with a heavy thud. He looked thinner than she remembered, more tired, but the same twisted cruelty clung to his face, as if hurting people gave him breath. "You can't just walk away," he said, pointing at her like a dog that had bitten the hand meant to control it. "I made you. Everything you are. You made me afraid." She interrupted, voice trembling but rising. You made me small, but I let you. I was too young and too scared to know what power meant. You didn't own me. You controlled me. That's not the same thing. His eyes flared. I fed you. I gave you a roof. You used me, she snapped. And then you left me tied to a fence to die. That's not love. That's not care. That's who you are. Amos stepped off the porch now, rifle low but ready. The space between them was tight with tension, the kind that could break into gunfire or collapse into silence. But the man didn't reach for a weapon. Not yet. Instead, he laughed a dry, hollow sound. So what now, Mara? You gonna shoot me? That it? You think you're a woman now, just 'cause this cowboy feeds you beans and lets you sleep in his bed. Mara's lip trembled, but she stood tall. I'm a woman because I say I am, and I don't need your permission to exist. He stepped closer, too close, and for a second Amos thought she might break. But she didn't. She looked him right in the eyes. You don't scare me anymore. He flinched, just slightly, like a man hit in the stomach by a hand he thought couldn't reach him. You think words change anything? He hissed. You'll always be what you were. Trash. Mara's breath shook. Her fists clenched. I'm not trash, she whispered. I'm loved. I'm safe. And I'm free. That's more than you'll ever be. Something in her cracked open right then, not with fear but with truth. Years of shame, guilt, self-loathing spilled out like dirty water. And once it was gone, she stood lighter, stronger, whole. The man drew a knife. Amos raised a rifle instantly. Don't. The man paused, blade gleaming. His eyes danced between Mara and Amos, then to the horse behind him. He was thinking, calculating. You shoot me, he said slowly. You hang. Law don't look kindly on murder, even if the bastard deserved it. I ain't gonna shoot you, Amos said, unless you give me a reason. Mara stepped forward then, just one step, close enough that she could see the edge of his fear, the flicker in his eyes that showed he didn't expect her to be the one confronting him. I don't forgive you, she said, but I'm done carrying what you did. It's yours now, all of it. He didn't speak. The knife lowered a fraction. She took another step, her voice calm. You don't owe me anymore. You don't get to say who I am. He opened his mouth, then closed it. His hand dropped aside. For the first time, he looked uncertain. You come back here again, Amos warned, stepping closer. You won't leave standing. The man sneered, but it was weaker now. He stepped back, one boot dragging in the dirt. This ain't over, he muttered, retreating to his horse. Mara didn't flinch. It is for me, she said. And with that, the man mounted and rode off, dust rising behind him like the end of a storm. Silence fell. Amos watched the trail until the rider was long gone, then turned to Mara. She was trembling, tears tracking down her face, but she wasn't hiding them. She wasn't crumpling. She was standing right in the center of what used to scare her. He went to her slow, careful not to crowd. I couldn't breathe, she whispered, but I didn't run. No, Amos said. You stood. I thought I'd fall apart. You didn't. She looked at him then, eyes full of tears, but also something brighter, pride, maybe, or peace. I'm not who I was, she said. Amos nodded. You're stronger. She exhaled, like the weight had finally lifted. He can't touch me anymore. No, Amos said, voice steady. He never could. Not really. That night, the fire burned low and soft. They sat together, not talking much, just breathing side by side. At one point, she reached for his hand, held it tight. I don't want to be afraid of love, she said quietly. But I am. He squeezed her hand gently. We'll take it slow. You don't owe me anything. I want to try, she whispered. Because when I stood out there today, I realized I don't want to live a life where I keep running. I want something real. He turned to her, eyes meeting hers. You've already got that. She leaned into him, forehead against his shoulder. For the first time, not hiding, not folding into herself. And Amos, who had spent years with silence as his only companion, felt a different kind of quiet settle over the cabin, a warm one. The kind that comes not from emptiness, but from peace. The kind that says the worst is over, and what comes next might just be worth staying alive for. The morning after the man rode away, the sky opened with soft gray clouds and gentle wind, like the land itself was letting out a breath it had been holding too long. The air was cool, clean, the kind that came after something hard had finally passed. Amos stood by the porch rail, mug warm in his hands, watching the trees bend slowly with the breeze. Behind him, the cabin was quiet, peaceful. Inside, Mara was still asleep, curled up under the quilt, her face turned toward the window where the light filtered in soft over her cheek. For once, her hands weren't clenched. Her body wasn't twisted with fear. She looked settled, not like someone hiding from a world that hurt her, but like someone who'd faced it and decided to keep living anyway. Amos didn't wake her. He let her sleep until the sun was high and the coffee had gone cold. When she did rise, it was slow, her steps soft on the wooden floor. She came outside, wrapped in her shawl, hair loose, face clear of anything but stillness. "He's really gone," she said after a moment. Amos nodded. "I saw his trail cut west. Not a sign since." She stepped closer, fingers brushing his on the porch rail. "You think he'll come back?" "He might," Amos said honestly, "but he won't find the same girl again." Mara looked at him, eyes serious. "You're not just saying that to make me feel strong, are you?" "No," he said. "You made yourself strong. I just saw it before you did." She was quiet a long time, then leaned against his shoulder. "I used to think healing was about forgetting," she said. "But now I know it's about remembering and not letting it crush you." He rested his hand gently over hers. "You remembered, and you rose." They stayed like that a while, the two of them facing the trail, watching the leaves dance in the wind. No words, no pressure, just space, the kind of silence you earned. Later, Mara helped Amos mend what was left of the barn. They worked slow, talking between the rhythm of hammers and wood. She'd never built anything before, but she caught on fast. He watched the way her eyes narrowed in concentration, how she wiped the sweat from her brow with the back of her hand and kept going. "You ever think about starting fresh?" she asked as she steadied a plank. "All the time," he said, "but never had much reason to." "You do now," she said, meeting his eyes. He didn't answer, just nodded and kept working. That evening, they sat outside with the sun low and orange across the fields. She had her book again, the one with the poems. Her fingers traced the cover, then opened to a dog-eared page. "I think I'm ready to write my own words," she said. He smiled. "What would they say?" She looked toward the hills. "That I made it. That I loved once and was used, but I'm not broken. That I found something worth staying for." Amos reached for her hand. "You did." Mara turned to him then. Not like she was scared. Not like she was unsure. Just soft. Open. "Do you want me to stay, Amos?" He looked at her, eyes steady. More than anything, her shoulders relaxed, and for the first time, she smiled with her whole face, real and bright and free. That night, there was no storm, no footsteps in the dark, just a warm fire and the steady crack of wood burning. Mara curled beside Amos on the small couch, knees tucked under her, head resting against his chest. He held her like something precious, not fragile. She lifted her face toward his slowly. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I," he said. She leaned up and kissed him, soft, hesitant but real. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't about erasing pain or proving anything. It was quiet and gentle, the way something new and careful should be. He kissed her back, hand resting on her waist, and when she broke away, tears had formed in her eyes. "Is this what love's supposed to feel like?" she asked, voice breaking. "I think so," he said. "It feels like something you want to come back to every day." That night, they lay together in the back room, fully clothed, the quilt pulled up to their chins, their bodies tangled not in lust but in trust. Mara's hand rested over his chest, feeling the slow rhythm of his heart. Amos held her like someone who knew exactly how much she'd been through and loved her for all of it. "I'm not used to being touched and not flinching," she whispered in the dark. You don't have to be used to it, he murmured. You just have to know you can say stop anytime. I don't want to stop, she said. Not with you. In the morning, there were eggs and fresh bread. Mara was barefoot, humming under her breath while she stirred in the skillet. Amos just watched her, leaning against the doorway like he couldn't believe she was real. I used to think I was too dirty to start over, she said. But I don't feel that way here. Because you're not dirty, he said. You're alive. She came over and kissed his cheek, her eyes playful for the first time. That's the best thing I've ever been called. A week passed. Then two. Jonah came by, bringing extra nails and lumber. Mara sat with his wife under the oak tree, talking quietly about herbs and gardens. Miss Gardy stopped by with a basket of canned peaches. Word had gotten around that Mara wasn't just a stranger. She was staying. She was loved. One afternoon, Mara asked Amos if he could show her how to ride alone. I want to feel like I can leave and come back because I choose to, not because I'm running. So he taught her, and she rode slow, then fast, then circled back with the wind in her hair and her mouth open in laughter. That night, they danced in the living room. No music, just movement. Her bare feet on the wooden floor, his hands around her waist, hers on his shoulders. The fire flickered behind them, and she rested her head on his chest as they swayed. I used to think being held was something I had to earn, she whispered. Now it just feels right. You never had to earn it, he said. You just had to find someone who knew what it meant. And she had. Seasons shifted. Spring crept in soft, with wildflowers along the ridge and birds returning to the trees. Amos built her a small garden bed behind the cabin. She planted tomatoes and beans and a single patch of lavender. I want something that smells sweet every day, she said, laughing. He carved her a wooden box with her name etched across the lid, Mara Finch, and gave it to her without ceremony. For whatever you want to keep safe, he said. She opened it with care. Inside, he placed a ribbon from her hair. The one she wore the day she told him her name. She touched it like it was gold, then looked at him. Thank you for not fixing me, just standing with me. He kissed her then, slow and sure. You didn't need fixing. You just needed someone to see you. One warm evening in early summer, Mara took his hand and led him back out to the field. Fireflies blinked through the tall grass. The sky was purple and soft. I used to dream of running away, she said. Now I dream about building something. Here, with you. You already are, he said. They stood there in the twilight, her head against his shoulder, his arm around her back. No one came down the trail. No danger lurked in the trees. The past had been faced, named, and left behind. This was something new, a quiet kind of forever. Not perfect, not painless, but true. And Mara, once lost, once broken, once tied to a fence like she was nothing, stood in the middle of it all, whole and unafraid, with a life that was finally hers.